Hello, everybody. Here is the Disruption Network Club from Berlin. I am Tatiana Bazzichelli, the director of the lab, together with...
I'm Lieke Ploeger, and I'm the community director of the Disruption Network Lab.
And we are really happy to, first of all, welcome our speakers that are following us from Tbilisi in Georgia. And I want also to thank our team that has been working with us really closely to produce this conference. I want to mention them briefly. Elena Velianowska and Nada Baker for the production, Jonas Frankki, the designer, Alanna Travers for the communication, and Claudia Trapp for the press. So this is our special conference because we have been working for 1 year to make it possible, and I really want to thank deeply Maya Talakadze from the Regional Democratic Hub in Caucasus that is following us from Georgia and Tbilisi today because we have been working together to produce this conference, and has been a great cooperation. So I'm very happy to welcome her in Tbilisi, and also all the speakers that are following us, and all the audience that is online. And I have to say also we are in a very special situation here because we are during a lockdown. So we are live from the Kunstquartier Bethanien in Berlin, but of course we don't have audience. So welcome to the audience as well, and I want to remind all of them that they could follow us today for free through our streaming, and also they have the possibility to interact with our speakers on our online chat. So please remember that if you want, you can ask the questions to the speakers when there will be the moment, and we can read the questions to them. So this is our 22nd conference of the Disruption Network Lab. We are an organization that is working in Berlin on the topic of social justice, whistleblowing, and also investigative journalism. And we have been also working with Transparency International as cooperation partner. So I also really want to thank Transparency International because this is already the second year of a great cooperation with them. And the topic of this conference is hate news versus free speech, polarization and pluralism in Georgian media. As I say, this was part of a program exchange that we had between Germany and Georgia. And the focus of this conference is to invite journalists, activists, media experts from Georgia and Germany to discuss on the topic of misinformation, hate speech, and also social network manipulation. And we all want together discuss also on media pluralism and how we can strengthen freedom of speech. Now I would like to pass the word to Maya that is going to introduce our organization. So thank you for being with us, Maya. I just pass the word to you.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lieke and Tatiana, and hello all from Tbilisi, Georgia. Before telling you about the project and its phases undertaken so far, I'm going to tell you a bit about our organization. Regional Democratic Hub Caucasus is a women-led organization, and that was established almost 2 years ago with diverse interests and values. Despite the fact that the organization itself does not have a long experience of operation, it unites people with different backgrounds, interests, and experience that help us to be successful in a couple of projects we are undertaking today and that we plan to do in future. For that reason that the organization itself does not have a big experience, I would like to thank those people and organizations who we are engaged in this particular project. Thanks for the trust you expressed to us thanks to Disruption Network Lab, especially brilliant women, Lieke and Tatiana, our donor, German Federal Foreign Office, Auswärtiges Amt, our honorable speakers and participants who we engaged in our training sessions in September and October this year. Now let me tell you a bit about the project itself, and I will do my best to be as short as possible, as extremely interesting presentations are on its way. The main aim of the project is to strengthen pluralism and to reduce polarization in Georgia media environment, and a strong and independent media always stands on the strong and independent journalists. We set the specific objective to strengthen the journalists. Within the project in the first phase, in December and October this year, we conducted 2 trainings here in Georgia. We worked with so-called acting journalists of traditional and non-traditional medias and bloggers, as well as students from media schools, and special focus was on regional medias. The announcement of the training caused a high interest from journalists and from students, and we received up to 120 applications for 30 places. During the training sessions, several significant topics were discussed. Among them were digital and media literacy, media ethics, hate news and hate speech, legal regulation of media environment, computational propaganda, identifying fake news, trolls and bots, etc. Both of the events were assessed by 100% of the participants as positive and fruitful. The third event as such was planned a conference and a workshop in Berlin as a real exchange between German and Georgian peers, but unfortunately because of COVID-19, the conference and following workshop is conducted online, and they hopefully will participate from Georgia. The participants. However, I do hope that German and Georgian peers are now watching, and they can really ask any questions they might have on the topic. Now I will try not to continue too long, and I would just add that all the information about the project, trainings and events are on the webpage of Disruption Network Lab, as well as on the both of the organization Facebook pages. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maya. Also for us was a very important cooperation, and we are also looking forward to go on with the projects together, because of course we have planned for the future too. And as Maya said, it's possible also to read all the information about this program on our webpage, that is disruptionlab.org. That is also the page you can access to then comments on our chat. But now I will leave the word to Lieke, that will also introduce the second part of the program that will happen tomorrow, and also thanks our funders.
Thank you, Tatiana, and also thank you, Maya. So great also to see you with us for this introduction, and it has been great to work together this year. So yeah, we do, after the conference of today, we do a final event tomorrow, which is a workshop called Anatomy of a Conspiracy Theory. And we're very excited in this workshop to bring together both the participants from Georgia, so people that were in the previous training events, and also participants from Berlin and also from other countries, since now we're doing the event online. So together with researcher and trainer Alistair Alexander, we will research and dissect several conspiracy theories from all around the world to understand what makes them work and also why they spread so fast. And of course, we'll also consider strategies for diminishing their power and encouraging fact-based narratives to challenge them. So you can also read more about this workshop on our website, and I think we have 1 or 2 spots still left for Berlin-based or other people. And then, yeah, a big thanks also to the funders of our project. So, as Maya already mentioned, we received support from the German Federal Foreign Office, the Auswärtiges Amt, as part of the expanding cooperation with civil society in the Eastern Partnership countries and Russia, for which we're very thankful. And of course, we're very happy to have as a project partner the Regional Democratic Hub Caucasus. We also worked in collaboration with Transparency International, and we also very much want to thank them also as part of our already longer running cooperation. And we want to thank our partner venues, the Kunstraum Kreuzberg-Bethanien, where we're recording from today, and State Studio, where we'll be live streaming the workshop from tomorrow. And finally, also thanks to our media partners, Taz, die Tageszeitung, Ex-Berliner Magazine, Il Mitte, and Furtherfield.
Thank you, Lieke. Also, I would like to add to the thanks the organization We Change that is in Berlin, because it's also thanks to them that we got to know Maya and her organization when we were together at the conference in 2019. So we are now entering into the specific of the conference today. We have 3 panels coming. The first, we will have it right now, is about an overview of the situation of polarization and media ethics in Georgia. Then the second panel that will happen at 2:15 is misinformation on social media during elections. Of course, I speak about 2:15 in Berlin, but it's 3 hours after in Georgia. And then the third panel will be for the Berlin time at 4:30. And the title is Hate Speech and Human Rights. So we start now with the first panel, and I will leave the word to Maya that will introduce the topics and the other speakers that I really want to thank a lot for being with us today. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, many thanks. Thanks one more time for the introduction. And now let me start the first panel, overview on the polarization and media ethics in Georgian media. For a brief introduction, similar to other former Soviet Union, former post-Soviet Union countries, the political environment in Georgia has been polarized since its independence. The political polarization has resulted in polarized media, and this is in turn is reflected in polarized society. To some extent, the increased access to different media outlets and the popularization of social media have brought about a more pluralistic pluralistic media environment, but after some period of time, Georgian society now faces the challenge of a polarization of pluralism in media. In this antagonist media environment, there are frequent media ethic violations. Subjects and articles that include hate speech and violation of media ethics are very popular, and media outlets that neglect ethics are more top-rated compared to balanced and ethical ones. How polarized is media environment in Georgia? What role does the social media has in it? How ethical media outlets do we have? On the very first panel, experts from Georgia will overview the situation of polarization and media ethics in Georgia. Now let me introduce our honorable speakers. Tamar Kintsurashvili is an executive director of Media Development Foundation, MDF, since 2017. Prior, she served as a chairperson of the MDF's board. Tamar is an author and co-author of numerous researches and publications on hate speech, disinformation, and media literacy. She is an editor-in-chief of MeetDetector.g, also third-party partner of Facebook's fact-checking program. And Tamar is also a member of Deutsche Welle Academy Media and Information Literacy Experts Network and associate professor at Ilia State University. And our next speaker is Nata Dzvelishvili. She is an executive director of Indigo Publication and the former executive director at Georgian Charter of Journalistic Ethics. This is self-regulatory body of media in Georgia. She works and carries out research on media self-regulation systems, media ethics, data verification, media literacy, digital switchover, Russian propaganda and misinformation. And Nata Dzvelishvili was a manager of the media critic platform MediaChecker.g. From 2012, she was involved in various media monitoring projects, and since 2015, she became the lead researcher of such studies. Nata Dzvelishvili is an editor of guidelines for journalists on ethical reporting, manual for journalists reporting on violent extremism, and moreover, she is a co-author of a manual on media literacy. Nata is an invited lecturer of the journalism program at various universities. And last but not least, Nini Gvilia. She is project assistant at the International Society for Fair Elections and Democracy, ISFED. And Nini is engaged in monitoring social media since 2018 at ISFED. During presidency election 2018, she was researching on the official electoral campaign on Facebook, political activities of different actors, and ultralight narratives on social media. Nini participated in the creation of the platform disinfoobserver.g that covers suspicious propaganda on Facebook and is currently working on the development. She obtained a certificate in social media monitoring from the European Platform for Democratic Elections. The first panel will be moderated by myself, and before giving the floor to Tamar Kintsurashvili, I will state the rules of the panel. There will be about 20 minutes of presentation from each speakers, and after that we will have discussion, and any participants, any people who are watching us can pose a question via the chat on Disruption Network Lab live stream, and please feel free to pose any question you are interested in this topic. Many thanks one more time. Sorry for a long introduction, and floor is yours. Tamar.
Thank you, Maya, for introduction. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, organizers, bringing us together to discuss this important topic for Georgia. Georgia has the most pluralistic and free media environment in South Caucasus region. However, it still remains among partly free country according to Freedom House and Reporters Without Border assessment, due to government's effort to impose and to restrict freedom of expression. The first two slides of my presentation, if it's possible to show, indicates the show assessments by Reporters Without Border and Freedom House. Both of them indicates that Georgia has pluralistic media environment. However, it is not yet independent and frequently biased. The next slide on EU Association Implementation Report also indicates a problem of polarization of Georgian media and changes of ownership of opposition-affiliated media outlets, which impacted overall media environment in Georgia. European Union also highlights the problem when government launched investigation, prosecutor office launched investigation against media outlets critical to government. These cases are not directly linked to the content production, but raises a suspicion about motivation of the prosecutor office, which also contribute to polarization of media environment. Key challenges peculiar to Georgian media landscape are related not only domestic development, but hostile country information influence operation. The major drivers of Georgian media environment are competing political interests ensuring pluralism on the one hand and shaping overall media environment, which results in instrumentalization of media and concentration of ownership of TV channel in the hand of ruling party. However, pressure on the media outlets, opposition affiliated media outlets, and changes in ownership of the Rustavi2 channel resulted in emergence of two new opposition affiliated media outlets, TV channels. Though media market itself is not self-sufficient, and we have limited resources and lack of transparency of financing, especially in online media, poses a serious problem. Unequal distribution resources as well. As a result of these factors, media outlets are not accountable to the public, but they are accountable to their owners, and they are a part of political agenda. Of course, we have neutral media outlets, especially in online media, but their impact on overall environment is limited compared with big TV channels, and TV remains as a major source of information in Georgia. Media accountability and self-regulation also is weak, and I think Nata will elaborate on this more. And I will talk also about information influence activities of hostile countries with intention to harm and divide society based on ethnicity, religious belief, or gender identity, and undermine democratic institution. And we are talking about overall media environment. These factors should be also taken into account. Unlike media outlets, which are more or less regulated, and broadcast media has obligation to report their financial sources, media outlets of hostile country are hiding their sources of funding. They are totally untransparent. In certain cases, ownership is concealed, and I'm not talking about Russian government-sponsored media outlets, Sputnik or Russia Today, when everybody knows that they are government-affiliated entities. They are less trustful in Georgian media, while other media outlets, and I will show later some examples, with cloned names like Fox News or others, are trying to manipulate with public opinion, and they are fully untransparent. We can move to the next slide. Which illustrates quite well how public opinion might be manipulated. And this picture, which is not unique for Georgia, describes quite well how one event can present it from different point of view and different angles. The view from satellite, and the next slide shows this case, illustrate how one story can present it by opposition and government affiliated media in very manipulative way. Our fact checkers try to establish what happened in reality and to look from satellite in order to find truth behind these two different versions of the story. And this is regular way how media reports on developments. But however, since we have different channels with different bias, we have chance to watch all of them and make our own conclusions. Manipulation with religious LGBT identity is also a problem, especially in social media, and Nini will talk about this later. But when we're discussing overall media environment, it's important to underline this problem, which tries to divide people based on their identity, and it's a part of political process when opposition protests often labeled as LGBT pride in order to somehow demonize the protests affiliated with political process. The most influential discrediting campaign ahead of elections was related to the monastery, David Gareji Monastery. Government of Georgia launched this campaign ahead of elections, which is disputed church on the Georgian-Azerbaijani state border, with demarcation work still ongoing. The campaign, which was accompanied by criminal case investigation against two servants promoted the narrative that opposition or former ruling party are selling churches and homeland, while Georgian government tries to neutralize this threat. And this campaign created fruitful ground for ultra-nationalistic and pro-Russian actors discussing Azerbaijan along with Russia in the context of threat of occupation. And by reopening historic trauma, we are trying to shift focus from the current Russian occupation to historical events. Pro-government affiliated TV channel, which is shown on the next slide, also a TV channel affiliated with ultra-nationalistic political party Alliance of Patriots, used the slogan, the Gareji, the name of monastery is Georgia. While this slogan disappeared day after election, this is clear illustration how public opinion might be manipulated for the political agenda. Hostile actors. I will talk about a little bit about hostile actors trying to use the Western brands against the West. They are also using the well-known names of the Guardian, Euronews, ABC News, or CNN or BBC in order to legitimize their messages. And this is a deflective source model when the ownership of media outlet is concealed and people have no time to verify all information because of flow of information. We have a limited time, and in certain cases we are reading only headlines, pictures, or looking for brands, and if they are familiar, we are trusting or sharing this content on Facebook. Next slide shows that the cases when we found that the clone CNN and BBC, their IP addresses were located in St. Petersburg in Russia, and the story was about coronavirus, saying that it is a man-made rather than natural virus. Intent of harm and divide is a specific trends, and we will talk more on value-based discourse, which also is an important factor when we are talking about radicalization of society. This headline is a good example. When Russian affiliated media outlets try to divide society based on their religious identity. This is fully fabricated story about Georgian Muslims who are ready to gain independence from Georgia by arms, which creates a fruitful ground for confrontation between ethnic Georgians and religious Orthodox and Muslim Georgians of our society. Value-based discourse often applies false dilemma techniques. If, for instance, I'll give you one example by leader of ultra-nationalist groups saying that if protection of David Gareji monastery and Georgia's territorial integrity is in Kremlin's interest and the protection of homosexuals is a Western policy, then these people who are talking about this discrediting the West itself. Next slide shows the overall structure of Kremlin-affiliated actors and their narratives. They are trying to create threat of war, loss of territories, and loss of identity, sowing distrust towards Western institutions, democracy overall, and offering solution with the help of co-religious powerful Russia in order to neutralize all these threats that are sometimes artificially created and promoted. And what we are doing to address these problems, we just recently joined the Facebook third-party fact-checking programs, which allows us to label content on Facebook if false news or manipulated or fabricated photos or images are disseminated by different actors. And I will show some examples of hostile country affiliated disinformation. On the next slide, you can see the content disseminated regarding the Maidan event, accusing West in staging the protest on Maidan in Ukraine in 2000 earlier, but this disinformation still relevant to Georgian disinformation channel. And pro-government trolls said another example of domestic disinformation campaign when pro-government trolls with name of Irma one case, Mariam in this another case, but actually she appeared to be Svetlana from Arkhangelsk, was spreading disinformation against opposition parties. Next slide shows the case when opposition troll Alibaba from Nigeria was spreading disinformation against ruling party, and so we are able to label this content on Facebook and reduce distribution of fabricated or false content. But not all fakes are bad and harmful. As you can see on the next slide, it's not visible. Unfortunately, it was about ABC News showing voter lines in Georgia instead of US elections in the state of Georgia, and Georgians perceived quite well this disinformation, and this made them very happy about prominence of Georgia in US elections. This is a brief overview of the trends. You can find information on our fact-checking portals and different social media platforms in English and in certain cases Russian, of course, in Georgian languages. Thank you for your attention, and I am open to your questions.
Many thanks. Thank you so much for the very interesting presentation. Indeed, polarization and social media manipulation is a serious problem for many countries in the world. I'm sure there are questions on it, but we will have the discussion at the end of the presentations, as I have stated already. And now I would like to give the floor to Nata Dzvelishvili. Welcome, Nata, to our conference. And Nata will speak about the current state of media ethics in Georgia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you for having me here today. It's really an honor for me. So it's my first opportunity to deliver a speech during this lockdown period. So I would like to somehow continue what Tamar has said. Georgian media is definitely polarized, and this polarization is, of course, reflected on the content, of course. Let me show you the latest report of media monitoring conducted by a self-regulatory body of media, Georgian Charter of Journalistic Ethics. This data covers pre-election period 2020. Just to explain you for our international audience, TV Tawari is pro-opposition TV company, and TV Medi is affiliated to government. So this is also the private broadcaster. Here you can see how they covered government and GD, the ruling party, during pre-election period. You can see that positive tone is very high on TV Medi, while a negative tone is very high on on TV and vice versa. UNM is the opposition party, and you can see that a high number of negative coverage on TV in Medi and positive coverage on TV in Tavari. So this is very obvious that this kind of coverage also causes the ethical challenges. However, this is not the only report which shows polarization in terms of content. Media coverage was assessed by International Observation Mission, OSCE also, and it stated that private broadcasters were visibly partisan. So bias reporting or partial coverage, of course, impossible without ethical violations. Just to give you a brief overview, I would like to highlight the most common ethical violations in Georgian media. These are accuracy, distinguish opinion from fact, respect privacy, discrimination, and hate speech. Of course, all of them include dozens of subcategories as they are broad terms. So I'm not going to talk in details, but I will give you some examples what I mean and what is the most strict violations of ethical standards. Before setting examples, I would like to show you another data. This also comes from Georgian Charter of Journalistic Ethics. This organization examines cases of violations. They discuss these cases and make decisions that the ethical principles is violated or not. So according to it, these are the most violated ethical principles in Georgia. On the top, you can see is accuracy, then correction, discrimination, and privacy. These decisions are made on compliance, after discussion of compliance, but observation and assessment of Georgian media experts prove the same. So if you just look through what is covered by Georgian media, you will have a same expression that accuracy and these other types of ethical standards are not respected by Georgian media. Let's start with accuracy. This category includes simple errors, unverified information, and misinformation, and it does not include disinformation or fake news. So, which actually are the different categories, because we are talking about media and not propaganda or deliberate distortion of the facts, which is absolutely is not media. So that's why I am not touching these types of ethical violations. I am just talking about some unprofessional coverage of media. So accuracy is on the top is not exception in Georgia. If you look through the cases discussed by press councils or media councils, whatever they are called, all over the world, you can find out that accuracy is most common problem in media, which is very natural, I think, because due to this first time and this daily basis, it's very natural that you might make this kind of mistakes. But what I would like to pay your attention is one issue which is quite new. I'm sure not only in Georgia but in other countries as well. This is the fact that media disseminate posts on social media as a fact. For example, it does not matter whether a public figure or ordinary citizen post on Facebook. This is taken and published as a fact by media outlets. Of course, they are not high standard media outlets, but still, as online media is very widespread in Georgia and very easy to establish such kind of media, clickbait websites, but not only them are use this strategy. They use this Facebook post and publish them without verification. Even jokes and some satirical posts are published as a fact. And we had several cases during these past years. Second one with my categories is distinguish facts from opinion. As there is lack of fact-based journalism in Georgia, this means that opinions frequently are disseminated as a fact, which has impact on audience attitudes and used as a manipulation on audience. I am not sure that in Germany you have such style TV programs, but in Georgia we call it the authors program. These are TV shows. Then anchor has a 5 or a 10 minutes introduction. There he or she is evaluated facts, express his personal opinion on current affairs, on politicians. They use even offensive words, swearing, and such kind of introduction is followed by some news or some interviews. So this is not a kind of separate program, commentary program. This commentary and news is somehow merged in these shows, which is of course not in compliance with ethical standards. And this offensive language is became quite a trend in Georgian media and used to discredit persons they don't like. In the beginning, I and Tamar also mentioned that there are some TV companies who editorial policies against one or that political party, and such kind of speeches are used against them. On the right side, you can see the screenshot from TV Rustavi. Here, the body is used by from president and the head of Bidzina Ivanishvili, billionaire who is behind ruling party and founder of this party. They use this illustration to show that president is mouthpiece of Bidzina Ivanishvili. And on the right side, you can see screenshot from TV Medi. They use this blood footage from movie just to assure people that this opposition party is violent. So this kind of coverage, of course, is not a high standard of media and even very far from this kind of international or local ethical standards. But somehow it's become like a trend in Georgian media. Another topic I would like to emphasize is reporting on criminal cases. Unfortunately, this year was full of high-profile cases. There are lots of questions regarding them. Of course, media did significant role to force prosecutor office to investigate these cases. But however, they spread unproved allegations, and this was obvious. They don't have enough facts to prove that this or that person was blamed in these cases. And of course, this kind of coverage damages reputation, not only the accused person, but reduces the trust towards media as well. I would like to highlight that yes, they did great job, but at the same time, their coverage was not the high professional, I can say. And privacy. This is kind of challenge for media for many years. This is not a new trend, and yellow journalism has a huge history. But I am not talking about yellow one. I am talking about news coverage and the violations of and the interference in privacy during the coverage of current affairs. So this. And the digital era, when people are trying to disclose personal information themselves and they post everything on Facebook, sometime and this kind of habits make media more challengeable. The boundary between curiosity and public interest is blurred, which causes violations of ethical standards, of course. Just to give you one example, I can show you screenshots from one coverage of one of the broadcaster in Georgia. This is also the criminal case, a high-profile criminal case. Please show the back slide, please. So this is a high-profile criminal case when journalists try to enter in the private property. The owners are taken into prosecutor office because they are under investigation. The house was not locked, so the journalists decided to open the door and to enter into the private property and to show that everything is out of order as a proof that investigation is going on. This was totally shock for me because this is the strong. This is the hardest way how to interfere in private life, because there was not any justification why you should use this way to gather some news, because everyone knew that they were under investigation and it does not matter how this private property looks like. So that's why this is not an exception. Of course, we have several cases, less impotence, but still privacy and respect of privacy still remains as a challenge for Georgian media. And grief and covering person in grief is, of course, related to respect of privacy. 5 or 10 years ago, not 10 or 15 years ago, in Georgia, it was like a trend that Georgian media used this dramatic music, cover people in grief. This crying, shouting was in common. It was a kind of style in journalism, but after that the situation improved, but I don't know why. But a year or 2 years ago this trend came back here, and now we have some footages when we saw the people at the even coffin and how they are crying, and this is the cases, then there is not a justification why we should show person in this situation. And the problem is that I'm sure that even these persons are trying to give them permit to cover them in this way, but still it is a problem and responsibility of journalists. And there were some cases then journalists reveal the death of the person before family members were aware of it. I just highlights that discrimination still remains a challenge in Georgia, as homophobical and xenophobical sentiments are very high in the country. And this problem is especially in the comments of the users below the footages and below the, for example, Facebook Lives. And media outlets does not have enough resources to filter all this hate speech below the articles. And the good thing is that hate speech is reducing on broadcasters, I mean mainstream media, which was serious problems years ago. Then even journalists use it, but we have some kind of improvements in terms of it. And how to deal with ethical challenges? This is a question which always arises when we are talking about ethical challenges. In the country like Georgia, we strongly believe that self-regulation is the way how we can improve ethical coverage. In Georgia, the democratic institutes are fragile, and the government use every single chance to use regulation as a leverage to impact on media content. We are always against some amendments in the law which somehow should be reflected on media content. So we try to a strong self-regulation system. I also already mentioned this Georgian Charter of Journalistic Ethics, which is independent self-regulatory body in media. We have this is actually union of journalists, 400 member journalists they have currently, and they have this board who has mandate to examine cases and complaints against the journalists. This is the same organization what you have Presserat in Germany. So applicants are various, even politicians and some artists or priests are apply here, which also give us hope that this institution will improve more. And I would like to show you some chart of examined cases. You can see the progress of this organization and the trust that is increasing. And I hope that this number will be increased and continue increasing. So another system is of self-regulation in Georgia is that based on the law, each broadcaster has obligation to establish self-regulatory body inside broadcaster, but however, it is not as effective as independent self-regulation. And at the end of my speech, I would like to touch media schools, as I believe that it is crucial in terms of ethical journalism. We have a lack of professionalism and lack of Georgian handbooks and resources if we conclude the overall situation what we have in our educational system. And I think that old-fashioned teaching style is also the problem in our country. So just to conclude my presentation, we believe that self-regulation and education is the only way how we can improve ethical coverage in the country. So this was kind of brief introduction what's going on in Georgia in terms of media ethics. So feel free to ask questions and I will try to give you further information.
Thank you, Nata. Thank you so much for the nice overview. I was listening very carefully and noted some questions. However, we will have discussion about 25 minutes later. And now it is time to talk about the social media perspectives in Georgia. According to the recent research, up to 20% of the population receives information mainly from from social media. While social media established the possibility of further pluralism in the country, it also presents a threat of disinformation. And Nini will tell you a bit more about that. Nini, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the panelists for this information. I represent an election observing organization, ISFED, which does election monitoring. Sorry, I hear my voice back, which is, I don't know what to do with that. Okay, I'll take out one earphone maybe. As long as you can hear me fine.
We can hear you well, so please continue. We will fix that in the background.
Okay, thank you. So our organization does election monitoring, traditional election monitoring, but what we did was that in 2018, we started conducting social media monitoring in order to encompass this field in the election monitoring field. And the reason for that was obvious that political activities have strongly shifted to the Facebook and social media. And so did the media outlets. As we all know, all the credible media sources are now sharing their information through Facebook pages and other social media pages. But in Georgia, one of the main sources of getting information is Facebook, because it's the most popular social media platform. And if, on the one hand, social media enable us to have more pluralized information environment, at the same time, we see, unfortunately, that in Georgia, it is being misused by malign actors in order to spread their narratives of their interests, which are biased, and spread disinformation to have the influence on public opinion and their behavior. What I wanted today to talk about is and show you are the examples of information operations that have been going on in Facebook, and some of them are still there. It's foreign in the. Can we go to the back slide, please? Last night, yes. So I will talk about the foreign interference in disinformation ongoing on social media, about the pages that are spreading the value-based narratives in order to manipulate the society, and the false media pages, which are specifically oriented on electoral periods and internal politics. And it's very important to note that the very alarming trend, what we see on social media, is how pages and malign actors are covering their work as being real media outlets, and thus deceive in a deceivable manner, share the information and disinformation in the population. So the first I'm going to talk about is Russian information operations in Georgia, and shortly show you its activity. You know, you might know that Georgia has for a long time been a target of disinformation campaigns and propaganda in Georgia, and there are several outlets that operate in order to manipulate public debate and divide society even more. And one of those outlets is the News Fund, which became very active in 2019, and its activity was striking during the COVID-19 virus. This is a Kremlin agency, which is usually spreading disinformation in order to destabilize the society, polarize it even more, and stir up antagonism in the society. The activity strategy of this information, you can see in the next slide that it usually comprises of the very complex network, which consists of the pages having links with fake accounts, groups, and these fake accounts are also creating illusion of interaction under the posts that are really not popular, and in order to stir up more antagonism and to create an illusion of something that is not in generally popular in Georgia, in the society. And on the screen, you can just see how one page is disseminating the same post in different groups at a very close time to each other, which means that their aim is just to proliferate information in a very organized manner. And on the next slide, please, you could see that, well, what Russian information operation aims is to confuse the society, and it has perfectly used the time of the virus outbreak in Georgia when people lacked the real information and they were already in a confusion, right? So it is easier in the times to disseminate fake narratives. And they used this time perfectly, and we've discovered several narratives, and I just took out examples, some of them. For example, that Georgia is an unsuccessful country, but even it manages to handle coronavirus, while developed Europe is powerless. And if Georgia wants to survive, it should connect its ties to Russia. So it was covertly very pro-Russian and anti-Western message. The next narrative it was actively proliferating in the social media field was attacking the Lugar Lab, which is the main national health research center in Georgia. And it has been a target for disinformation, Russian disinformation campaigns for a long time. And this COVID virus outbreak was not an exception. And in the articles, we would see that the articles would say that the China and not the Lugar Lab, EU or the US are helping Georgia in the fight against coronavirus. And the Lugar Lab's role in this process is really exaggerated. Of course, it's all false information because Lugar Lab was the main research laboratory and still is the very biggest help in combating the coronavirus outbreak. The next narrative, which we were seeing on social media, was that Russia and China are helping Italy, while EU has turned its back on Russia, and Russian military vehicles are driving in Italy, a NATO member, and Italians have replaced EU flag with a Russian one. So this was also very strong anti-Western narrative and pro-Russian narrative that even Russia was helping European country, but not the EU itself. So this was just an example of how foreign actors might use social media and cover their activity as being credible media sources, but in reality, they were spreading only disinformation and fake news in a very sensitive time of Georgian citizens' life. The next I want to discuss is a group of radicals that call themselves the source of alternative information, Alt-Info, it's called. They have this program. They had this program on Facebook with the live shows, and they would discuss news, but mostly manipulated information. And in reality, their aim was to spread anti-liberal, anti-Western, and anti-immigration LGBTQ narratives. They used a lot of hate speech, and they would attack minorities, women, ethnic minorities, and so on. And it was really a challenging issue in Georgia because, and plus they have been spreading pro-Russian narratives and anti-Western narratives as well. And one of the examples for that was that you can see on the next slide, I have a screenshot from their TV program where once they had as a guest Alexander Dugin, who is like one of the main ideologies of the Russian expansionist policy. And in this program, he would be talking about how Russia would welcome Georgian territorial integrity only when Georgia would break ties with the Western world. So this all, of course, like Alt-Info comprises of Georgian men, Georgian citizens, but it brings up question whether or not they have some links with foreign actors, if they are trying to proliferate pro-Russian messages like this. And we've observed that this organization was engaged in coordinated, inauthentic behavior, which means use covert activity of the organization or the page on Facebook, which aims to hide its real purpose and its real aim. We've noticed that it has linked with several other pages more than 30 pages, which were behaving in a coordinated manner. And the most important part is that they would use the pages with the names such as, you can see, the best day US sale, for example. And if you would go to the page, you would notice that from the beginning, the page aim was not to spread this Altinfo narrative, but rather than just, this page was just for entertainment and so on. But later it seems as Altinfo took control of the page and started disseminating all their TV programs and this anti-liberal narratives. And after the reporting of this, Facebook had took down the pages related to the Altinfo, as it goes against the regulations of Facebook to engage in a coordinated inauthentic behavior. Thus, nowadays, this group of people cannot do their work at Facebook, but we now see that they are trying, that it causes next challenge, because they are trying to broadcast their TV program on the national television. And I have took out the screenshot from their promo video on the next slide, which says that in the video it said, soon on TV you'll be able to finally see the hate speech, discrimination, sexism, homophobia, and xenophobia. So it is really, this video might have been cynical, but it is the real aim of this group, as a lot of civil society organizations have been for a long time observing their activities, and it has been proved many times by the fact checkers as well, which here Tamar represents, that this organization usually uses manipulated information or fake information in order to sow distrust in everything that in everything new, and in everything that is, they know it's sensitive for Georgian society, as Georgians, most of the Georgian society are still very traditionalist and conservative in their views and beliefs. And the next thing I want to discuss, and this is one of the main alarming trends we have observed on Facebook, is the rise of the so-called false media pages. Our organization has noticed the activity of the pages in 2018, before the presidential elections in Georgia. So what these pages do is that they totally resemble, by their look and the design and the posts they publish, they resemble the real credible online news outlets. And they use the names that also look alike real online news outlets. But in reality, if you monitor their work, you will discover that their main aim is to set on social media political agenda that serves only one political party, and they would share the information only from one perspective. And in Georgia, the reality is that all these false media pages that are being active, and mostly they are active before the election period, they are linked, they are sharing the information which would put the ruling party in a positive manner, portray the ruling party in a positive manner, and opposition party in a negative way. So it makes us believe that, of course, these pages operate in a deceptive manner to PR the work of the ruling party in Georgia. So their activity strategy is to set the illusion of reliability. They use high quality photos and videos, and most of their content are very similar to each other, so you could see the coordination of these pages, because they use the same design, even with minor changes, but it is still visible. And they would share the same posts with the same content. And what they did a lot was that they were sponsoring their posts, because as they are not the real media outlets, they did not have audience on Facebook. And to reach the bigger engagement, they would use a lot the sponsoring mechanism. On the next slide, I just wanted to show the example of how deceptive might be this kind of Facebook page, which acts as if it was a news outlet. So on the first two screens that look alike, you can see that it is very similar to each other with very minor changes. And the text was about Facebook taking down pages that were linked to the main opposition party in Georgia, which was true partially, because the whole story was that Facebook took down a lot of pages, and most of them were linked to the ruling party. But it also has took down the pages that were linked to the opposition party. And what these pages did, and they were sponsoring all the time this post, was that they would take out and share only this information which was subjective, and sponsor this post in order to reach the further audience. And on the other hand, what they do is they usually just post their posts are about the projects that the government does to portray them in a very positive manner. So you can see how these kind of pages are acting and under the coverage of being the media outlets are polluting the informational space, which is a very rising challenge to Georgia, and civil society organizations are doing the biggest and greatest part in combating this issue, but we see that it is not enough from just only the coming from just only the one institution. And even though nowadays, like civil society organizations have very close contacts and networks with social media platforms such as Facebook, and based on our reporting, the Altinfo network has been taken down. So was taken down the Russian linked network. But for example, these false media pages are still active, and whenever something sensitive happens in the country, they're becoming really active. They're starting sponsoring the post, and you can see how hard it is for the person, if you are not well skilled enough, or even for anybody, it could be very it could be very deceptive, right? So it poses a really big challenge for healthy public debates in the society. Thank you. Looking forward to the following questions to get into more details, of course, everything.
Go ahead, Maya.
Thank you so much, Nini. Thank you all for your wonderful presentations one more time. And now I would like to open the discussion. And I encourage the participants who are watching us and who are listening to us to ask questions via the chat bot that we have on the webpage. But before, I would like to ask you some questions that I was noting during the presentations. And to start with, actually, polarization is not a challenge only for Georgia, and many countries in the world face the same challenges. First, I would like to ask to Tamar, what do you think, how important is to have an independent and impartial media outlet in the country, and what kind of influence it may have on society? What will be the difference?
Thank you for this question. Of course, polarization is not peculiar only for Georgia. We observe it in the US and other countries. But unlike other established Western democracies, we have a weak judiciary because the change of ownership is frequent following changes of government, and it results in changing of editorial policy. So the fact is that Georgian media market is too small, and politicians are invested a lot. But this is the reality, and we are trying more or less follow their transparency, check who stands behind media outlets. At least we know agenda behind these political interests. And there is no equal opportunity for small media outlets, especially online one. They are observing professional standards, but they are more donor dependent because mostly Western donors support the fact-based, accountable media outlets, and these big players trying to Somehow, of course, pluralism is important, but better to have neutral and independent media outlets rather than this situation we're observing right now. But it depends again on the business side of the media sustainability problem, and it's difficult to change. At least we are trying to track transparency of funding sources, government interventions, etc., in order to inform public how to deal with media outlets and have better understanding about their intentions and goals. This is very important because there was one question in the chat, and I will address this. There was a question about coronavirus, and it's good illustration, the demonstration of different interests. On the one hand, we observed political news. It was mostly related, as Nini mentioned, to interest of Russia against US-supported Lugar Lab, which is important health care institution in Georgia diagnosing coronavirus and helps to prevent different type of diseases. And it's often targeted not only by pro-Kremlin media, but President Putin himself and other high-level Russian politicians. On another hand, there were clickbait sites with different goal. It was just gaining money from clicking web links. And we also observed anti-liberal discourse stemming from clergy or anti-liberal groups saying that coronavirus is punishment from the God rather than some healthcare problem. So, and they were also happy with the coronavirus because migrants were prevented to enter Georgian land. And this was portrayed in a very comical way by these anti-liberal groups, and they were denying at all the existence of coronavirus.
Thank you so much. And if I may, just continue the topic of polarization, you mentioned during your web presentation that the situation in media environment is pluralistic. However, there is a big polarization. And very often this media polarization actually has an influence on society, and society also becomes very frequently polarized. And I would like to ask you about the public broadcaster that we have in the country. What do you think? What kind of role does this public broadcaster have in order to reduce to some extent this polarization in media, especially?
Of course, public broadcaster can play the crucial role in presenting events in more neutral way. Maybe Nata knows more data from recent election report. I was not observing. We are very carefully. But when we're talking of public broadcaster, its role is especially important in terms of informing ethnic minorities. We have two big groups of ethnic minorities densely populated in Samtskhe-Javakheti, I mean Georgians of Armenian origin, and in Khemokartli, ethnic Azerbaijani Georgian citizens. And this is a real problem for Georgia because they are most vulnerable to foreign influences, especially because of language barrier. And here is the role of public broadcaster to informing these people, but it's not always about informing and translating Georgian news. It's about inclusive reporting as well. Because they are excluded from this news coverage. When you are translating something what is happening in capital, they are not identifying themselves in this news because they are not part of news coverage. And we can talk about the hate speech, but we should talk about inclusive reporting as well, when all members of our society are part of this coverage. And I think this important mission and the gap should be fulfilled by public broadcaster.
Thank you so much. I see that there are so many questions in the chat to you, but let me first ask other participants some other questions, and I'll get back to you for sure with the questions that the participants are sending to us. Nata, I would like to ask you about the media ethic environment in Georgia. Actually, you had a very nice overview in your presentation, and in one of the slides, we have seen that the number of applications and media ethic violations is increasing year by year. And can we somehow say that when this very often the especially the TV channels, if we just focus on TV channels, sometimes when they violate media ethics and even Georgian ethical charter, always, not always, but very frequently say that this particular TV channel violated this principle of media ethic. But even though there are some violations from their side, the self-regulating body said that they violated this particular principle, but they are still very popular. If we look through the rankings, we will see that the media outlets who violate actually, and not very rare, frequently, they violated media ethics, they are still very popular. Can we somehow say that the people don't really care a lot about the ethical media outlets, and I mean, since the channels violate, but people still watch it, and they are still high rated and one of the top rated media outlets. And how do you think what is supposed to be done in order to get and to have media outlets that are at the same time ethical and at the same time popular? Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. I think that the watching and TV rating and the trust is a totally different thing. People might watch very frequently unethical coverage because it's interesting. Sensational coverage is interesting, and then TV anchor is swearing and using offensive language is interesting, and the people, of course, interested in what is going on there, and they turn on this TV company. But it does not mean that they trust it, that they like it. That's why popularity and the trust is totally different thing. And the solution is that we should promote ethical journalism and strength. And empower these media outlets who try to verify information, who try to be ethical. But and in this situation and what we have now in Georgia, these ethical media outlets are facing very serious problems. They are just trying to survive because of lack of money. If you look at data of media regulatory of Georgia, which always disclose information, the incomes of TV broadcaster, you see that in this year there is a huge number of investment of owners and founders, and this means that even these major companies need subsidies from owners, and they need this donation. While we have this ethical small media outlets whose owners are not able to invest money in these media outlets. And ethical coverage and verification and analytical or in-depth reporting need more resources. And currently, as Tamar said, the Georgian advertisement market is not sufficient at all. And politicians try to invest money, which all, of course, promotes their positive coverage and causes unethical coverage, as I said. That's why the only solution is that to empower these ethical media outlets. Unfortunately, the social situation in Georgia is not good. I mean, economical situation, and the readers are not able to donate and support this kind of media outlets, and the donors are the only way which is used by such kind of media outlets. That's why my answer and my opinion is that solution is just to change overall media environment, because it is very, very unhealthy what is going on here. For example, I am representing Indigo, which is a small media outlet who is focused on analytical materials, and we are struggling and we are trying to survive, actually, because even advertisers prefer to prepare materials which are not distinguished from editorial materials. So they try to help you to violate ethical standards, and they prefer to go to this unethical media outlets, and they are not trying to support small media and ethical media outlets in terms of CSR, I mean social responsibility, what these huge companies said. So media environment should be changed if we would like to promote ethical coverage.
Thank you so much. And my next question, before I go to the questions from the participants, and there are some very interesting questions, and I would like to cover them also. But before that, I would like to ask Nini. Nini, you were showing us the benefits, actually, and the threats coming from social media. And since on the one hand, it's creates ability for having different media outlets, and it somehow makes possibility to have a bit more pluralistic media in the whole media environment. It also creates a threat of disinformation, misinformation, and social media manipulations. If I go to very general and very basic questions, I would like to ask you your assessment, since you are working quite a long already on observing social media in various times, actually. Sometimes during elections, and sometimes also other periods of time. And these elections also in this country is not very rare, and we have almost very often. And I would like to ask you regarding this social media perspectives and current state. Do you think that your own opinion, do you think that it brings much profits or much threats? Which one prevails? Thank you.
Thank you, Maya, for the question. Well, for now, from our observations, what we are seeing, unfortunately, is a lot of challenges that are coming from the social media, and the challenges that we are seeing are having influence on public opinion in debates, as this Facebook, this space is becoming so polluted with the disinformation and manipulated information, which comes from very different sources. As I have mentioned, unfortunately, it's not only the foreign actors that are using this and misusing it in order to share their own interests and views and beliefs, but or also it's an internal threat. And it has become quite popular from every political side to use this for their own political interest. Thus, for now, the social media space is creating more challenges and threats rather than creating opportunities for more pluralized information space, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you so much. And now I would like to go directly to the participant question, and I am happy that you are active and you are engaged in that. And the first question I would ask to Tamar. There is a question about freedom of media and freedom of speech, and I will read out the question directly. To what extent does the Georgian legislation support freedom of media and protect freedom of speech? We somehow covered this topic during your presentation, but if you spread this part a little bit more, thank you.
Thank you for this question. Actually, Georgia has quite advanced legislation in terms of protection, freedom of speech and expression. It's similar to US standards rather than EU legislation, because opinion is protected with absolute privilege and only intentionally disseminated disinformation or false facts might be subject of libel cases. And it's important for countries in transition. I will try to explain why, and it concerns also hate speech legislation, which is also problem. But when you have the court judiciary not enough independent, and judiciary changes its position based on who is in power, it's quite dangerous, misuse and abuse any legislation that might be interpreting the content related issues, which are very subjective, in favor of dominant political forces. There are attempts to introduce blasphemy law, which is about offense of religious feelings, which are very subjective. And we know many European countries restrict hate speech. There are criminal liabilities for this. But in case of Georgia, in European countries, the goal of the law is to protect minority from majority rather than vice versa. In our case, it might be for protection of religious feeling of dominant church. And we had very bad examples when people expressing their critical views on church were summoned for questioning. So it's more dangerous than restriction of hate speech might have negative effect rather than protect minorities from this. And there was another question, and I will cover this, about the hate speech by politicians, since I'm actually address these issues. Of course, this is a real challenge because in certain cases, media is just channel covering hate speech by politicians. And we have many political parties, anti-liberal, ultra-nationalistic parties, inciting hate speech, and Turkophobia is quite strong. One of political parties, Alliance of Patriots, capitalized mostly on Turkophobic sentiments, saying if Russia is occupied, why not Turkey, referring to historic occupation of Ottoman Empire, trying to reopen historic trauma. And it's easy for politicians to speculate on identity related discourse. It's more difficult to offer economic solutions, and it's a fruitful and ground for any politicians. Unfortunately, in certain cases, pro-Western opposition also speculates on anti-migrant issues. And since populism is rising in Western countries as well, it's not good time to judge our politicians, but it's very dangerous and challenging because it's easy to provoke confrontation since Georgia is multi-ethnic, multicultural countries, and recent developments with Nagorno-Karabakh was good illustration how it's easy to create tension because you have Azerbaijani minorities in country, you have Armenian minorities, and you should be very careful not to cross red lines. I think that Georgian civil society organizations are very strong in watchdogging these attempts, and we are very vocal to address this issue, and it's better to leave this space for non-state actors rather than give opportunity to government to restrict by legislation the content that might be manipulated and misinterpreted in favor of dominant political powers.
Thank you so much, and thank you for covering other questions as well that is coming via the chat to our platform. And now another question is to Nata, and I'm trying to be in time and not to go over our allocated time, but there are really interesting questions over here, and I would like to read out. This is especially to Nata, and this is connected to accuracy. Could the problem of inaccuracy and the lack of ethics in media be linked to the low level of professional qualification of journalists in Georgia? I think you had the presentation and the slides on education environment in media schools, and if you cover a little bit more about that would be brilliant. Thank you, and thanks for the questions to the participants.
Thank you for this question. Of course, any violation of ethical standards is linked to unprofessionalism because it's unprofessional to violate ethical standards, and accuracy is not exception. Vice versa, accuracy is the most common violated ethical principles because of lack of skills of verification or accountability, responsibility. So it's very easy to violate these ethical principles if you don't think more. And the journalist is mostly thinking of the ways how to cover this story, to put the relevant questions, to have the answers of these questions. So this is responsibility. And in the time of digital era, when everyone can be a journalist and everyone could be a information, could spread information, it's became more difficult to be quick as the users on social network. And of course, it causes additional problems of verification for journalists. In Georgia, we have several cases, and even they mislead the names of the dead persons, and they show the pictures of another person and say that he or she was killed instead of the real one. And it was due to this from time due to this lack of skills and due to lack of responsibility. They just search and find the first photo and put it on the screen. So this the short question is that yes, every violation of ethical standards is linked to lack of professionalism, and we need more education and the core values. We should agree core values of journalists because in the era of information disorder, what we have right now, trust toward media and trustful media outlets will survive. And this is the only way verified information and information with the high standard, high quality information is the only thing what media has in the era of this information disorder. That's why we should have some kind of agreement what's our core value, and just to try to protect all this value, and the accuracy is on the top, of course.
Many thanks for this answer, and definitely I should agree with you regarding that we need more education in this field, and that's why I've started my introduction with this fact that why we set this specific objective in our project, that we wanted to strengthen the capacity of journalists and to make them stronger, since actually strong media stands on strong journalists, and this is really important for us, for the country that really needs for future development of media. And I would like to ask next question, if not last. I am not sure about the timing, but the next question is to Nini, to in our chat. What are the instruments for fighting against spread of disinformation in social media? We also covered this topic a little bit, but this question you might cover differently.
Yeah.
This
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, well, the disinformation topic is actually quite complex, and it needs a multidimensional approach to address this issue, because we cannot say that regulations can help this, and on vice versa, it must be the worst way to deal with this issue, because we can see that everything can be misused. And as Nata also mentioned, when in Georgia we have very fragile institutions, we cannot depend on them when talking about the regulations in social media. What is need to be done more is coordination between different agencies. We are very well working now together, different civil society organizations, and combating this issue of disinformation, and having these talks within each other. But it would be really important to have some agency on the state level that at first would fully recognize that this challenge exists in Georgia, first and foremost, openly recognize, and then have some coordinating body which would coordinate civil society organizations that have for a long been working on the disinformation, and some state agency to work on this issue together. And this would be really helpful in sense of raising media awareness and media literacy as well. Of course, civil society organizations such as MDF is working and doing greatest job in this field, but it would be really important to enhance the strategy and to, for example, have some kind of advertisement, maybe even on public broadcaster, for example, right, to raise awareness of the public, and not only just the young people, but those who are more prone to get under the influence of manipulation in the social media. Thank you. I think we are a bit out of time, so.
We still have 2 more minutes, and Tamar, you would like to add something else to disinformation on social media?
Actually, we are cooperating with industry and Facebook. We're partner of Facebook third-party fact-checking program, which is most effective tool to address this problem. We are able to identify the problematic content on Facebook, fact check and label this content on Facebook. We are receiving information from the ordinary people, not from youth only. Youth are involved in debunking process, and our content appeared on debunked stories, and Facebook reduces distribution of this content. We had very good examples when traditional media spread disinformation, and after labeling them on Facebook, they corrected information in proper way, identified the error in headline in text. Unfortunately, sometimes there is a way to clean your mistakes, and people are removing the initial false content instead of correcting and informing people. So we have particular instruments, and we are dealing with this problem, and this is very fruitful cooperation which has particular concrete results to diminish disinformation on Facebook.
Thank you so much. I think we are going to have some conclusion for this very interesting panel today, and I would like to thank you all for your presentations, for your time for discussion, and I also would like to thank you for your participation for our training sessions that we had in September and October this year, and this was really fruitful, and many thanks. And I would give the floor to Tatiana to give instructions about the next panels that we have today. Thank you once more.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you to all the speakers. This first panel was very important to give a first introduction, but was not only an introduction. I think we went already in depth of the matters. So, Maya, we will be back together at the end of the conference. And at the moment, I want to introduce what is happening next. We will have a break of around 1 hour, and we start again at 2:15 with the panel Misinformation on Social Media During Elections. This will be 5:15 in Georgia. And this panel is organized together with Transparency International, so I also want to thank them for the cooperation. Will be moderated by Eka Rostomasvili. And then the third panel of today will be at 4:30, 7:30 in Georgia, about hate speech and human rights. So thank you very much, Maya. Thank you, all the speakers. And we will be back in around 1 hour. Thank you.